Hi there. So last month I uploaded a pretty crazy video where I built this huge redstone machine as a part of a collaboration with a museum in Seoul, South Korea, and I even got to fly there to be part of a live musical performance. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I highly suggest you check out that video first for the full story. I guarantee you won't regret it. One thing I didn't do in that video though is explain in detail how all of this works, which is what I'll be doing today. Well, today and next week when I'll be uploading part 2, so be sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss it. There is a lot to cover here, so in the words of Rendog, I hope you have a tasty beverage and a crunchy snack, and let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to mention is in order to understand this entire video, you're going to need to know about how In C by Terry Riley works. So if you aren't already familiar with how it works or you need a quick refresher, go ahead and check the original video out because I think I did a pretty good job of explaining it there. Don't worry, I'll be here when you get back. Alright, cool, welcome back, or welcome here if you never left. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyways, you might be wondering what the heck this is in front of you. I'll explain. So in the original video, I said, all we have to do now is just keep track of the active module that's the furthest back, and then mark the next 3 modules as available to be moved forward. So yeah, I was pretty vague in that one, so we're gonna get more specific right here. So you can see in front of you, we have these 3 wide slices here. So they are alternating green, blue. So you can take each of these 3 wide slices as a part. So let's pretend this one is part 0, this one is part 1, this one's part 2, etc., etc. And what we have here are these levers. So this represents part 0 is being played, this one represents part 1 is being played, and so on. So when I say that a part is being played, I mean that it's being played by either just one player or many players. We don't really care at this point how many players are playing it, just that it is being played. So in this configuration here, we know that part 0 and part 1 are being played by either one each or some other combination of many here, etc., etc. Alright, so with the knowledge that every player needs to be within 3 parts of each other, so they can span 4 parts, right? Because this furthest back one can move once, can move twice, or can move 3 times without breaking any of the rules. You can see in this configuration here that these 2 parts are being played, and this part, part 0, is the furthest back part that is being played. As such, we can mark it as well as the next 3 as available to be moved to, but you can see that this one over here is not available to be moved to. That is indicated by these redstone lines down here. You can see that these 4 are on, but this one is off. So you can see that if there is a player that wants to move from here to here, for instance, they can do that simply because this line is on, right? But if this player wanted to move 1, 2, 3 spaces over to this, then this redstone line should actually block that from happening. So that when it's happening in conjunction with this next circuit over here, this right here, this line, serves as a blocker. All right, so let's play around with these levers to see what happens. So we've got these 2 turned on, right? We can have this one turned on. We can even have this one turned on. And this right here is the maximum allowable spread for the within 3 rule. And you can see that these ones being flicked over here does not change any of the output at the bottom. However, if I go back to the original configuration like this, and then unflick this lever, you'll see that this updates, right? So now this one is the furthest back that's on. So now it marks it and the next 3 as available. And you can see that it only cares that this one is the furthest back. So you can see that if I unflick that, there we go, it updates. Unflick that, it updates, right? Or this is another legal spread. If I go ahead and click this, there we go, this one will turn off. So it dynamically updates, as you can see, which is really, really cool. So of course the question is, how the heck does it do that? So when a module is turned on, it will feed a signal strength of 15 into this comparator here. This comparator will go into this block, and then power these two redstone dusts. And these two will then power everything on top of this line here. So that will just keep on going forever and ever. At the same time though, you can see that that signal also dips down here and powers this repeater. So that's its self-marking behavior, as you can see there. If we hop on over to the back though, this is where things get actually quite interesting. So you'll find a barrel with a very specific number of items inside of it, and you'll see a comparator in subtract mode. So the reason that I specified that this will be taking a signal strength of 15 is because it passes on that signal strength to the back of this comparator. It will subtract 7 from it, right? Because that's what this barrel is set to be. And so we have a result of 8. Now, why is this important? This very specific signal strength is just enough to reach this very last piece of wool. And so you can see that it reaches 1, 2, 3 pieces of wool, i.e. it marks the next 3 as available. And if I pop on over to spectator, you will see that these are being read by these repeaters here, and that's going into the same line. So it's being ORed with this signal that would be coming in from this repeater over here. So you can see it down here as well, and you can see it all along the bottom just like that. So that's how it perfectly marks itself as well as the next 3 only, without going all the way to the 4th. But one question, of course, still remains. How does this system know, like if I had this on, or if I had this on, how does it know that this one is the furthest back? Now you might have noticed that this comparator is in subtract mode, and there is a piece of redstone going into the side of it. Well, all of them are in subtract mode, and you can see now what might be going on. If it's the furthest back, then this repeater doesn't have any signal from behind it, right? Which means this piece of redstone actually stays off, and then it turns on every other piece of redstone that is in this line going forward. Now, because this is a repeater line, it's directional. So wherever you can see this gets inserted into, nothing behind it gets lit up. I hope that made sense. Now, speaking of directional lines, you may have noticed that back here, these blocks over here are glass. Now, they're actually glass for a very specific reason. You see, a really easy way to get a directional line is to just do a repeater chain. But you can also do this sort of pattern here because redstone has this interesting property where it is able to travel up the side of a transparent block, but not able to travel down. So if I were to place this lever down here and just swap them like that, you'll see, there you go. Interesting, right? So it makes sure that this signal strength of 8 only propagates in this direction and not in both directions. And you can see here that it dips down and back up just fine because it can travel up fine, but it can't travel down. A very interesting quirk with redstone that isn't used very often, but when it is used, it's actually very, very nice and handy. So there we go. That's the circuit that governs the within 3 rule. Let's move on to the next part of the machine. Now, this right here is a fair bit more complicated. So this part of the machine keeps track of where each player is. So this right here represents a slice for one player, and this is the part that's stacked in the final design. And you can see these 3 buttons here. They're all right next to each other. This one represents move by 1. This one represents move by 2. And this one represents move by 3. And I have them set up to send 2-tick pulses into the back of this comparator on the same line. Now you may be wondering how on earth I have 3 separate selectors going into the same redstone line. Well, of course, the simple answer is signal strength. The complicated answer is how. So I'll walk you through that right now. So right off the bat, you can see that when I push this button, it will go into here at a signal strength of 15, then 14, then 13. Then we have a minus 12 actually coming over here. So that means this button corresponds to a signal strength of 1. This one corresponds to a signal strength of 2. And this one corresponds to a signal strength of 3. You'll see that that signal strength just travels right along this black line here. So no big deal there. It just goes all the way through the system. Then at each of these black wool locations, it gets picked up by this comparator here, which preserves the signal strength and brings it over to this comparator over here. Now this one's in subtract mode, and you can see here that it is currently being disabled. So even though we've attempted to forward that signal into here, we were unable to do so because of this redstone here. This redstone is being powered by this torch underneath it, and this torch is connected to this comparator, which is reading off of this dropper over here. Now these two droppers are facing towards each other, so you can see that in this dropper, we have an iron nugget, and in this dropper, we have nothing. So if I were to move this iron nugget over to here, you'll see that now, if I can get myself out, this piece of redstone is off. So if this piece of redstone is off, then this signal that's coming in from this black line can get forwarded through this comparator into this line right here. So this is another directional line. As you can see, the signal will only be able to propagate this way because of these comparators. And this is where the difference between signal strength 1, 2, and 3 are realized. So if we pretend that a signal strength of 1 goes into the back of this, then we have a signal strength of 1 going into here, and then we have a signal strength of 1 coming out here, and this one doesn't turn on. So what happens in this instance is this target block gets powered, but this target block does not. So that will turn off this torch, which will turn off this line because this repeater is not powered. When this line turns off, it will turn on this torch, which will attempt to power this comparator, unless of course it is blocked, as you can see here. Now you might be asking, why would this be blocked? Well, it would be blocked if this particular module is not available to be moved to, right? So this is actually going to be inverted, as you can see, but this right here is being fed from these outputs down here. But of course, in this stripped down version, I just have it being controlled by a lever. So if we presume that it was unlocked, then this signal will actually be passed through this comparator here, which will turn on these two pieces of redstone. Now, since they're on glass, right, it is preventing the quasi-connectivity with this dropper, so it only powers this dropper here, which will kick this iron nugget into this dropper, which will turn off this comparator, stay with me here, which retracts this piston, which will send a pulse into this L-shaped line of redstone, which will send a pulse through this comparator, which is actually being subtracted by this barrel here. We'll get to that in a second. And that signal will travel in this direction only, so the backwards direction only, because of these pieces of glass here. So it will travel to this glass, but it won't travel down. And then it will power this target block, travel down, and then power this target block, and so on and so forth. Now, the reason for this barrel and this subtraction is because we want it to be limited to the previous 3 modules. Honestly, even my head's spinning with this. So as you might imagine, if this switch was successful, right, then what we want to do is we want to turn off, or we want to reset the previous 3, because the previous 3 are the only 3 where this player could have come from. I really hope I'm making sense here. But yeah, let's recap. So selection comes in through this black line. It will get picked up at each of these black wool, and it will only be forwarded onto this line if that particular module is on. Then it will be passed through this line, and then you can see that this torch will turn off, turning off this line, turning on this torch, and if it is available to be moved to, then the move will succeed. This iron nugget will move over to this dropper, which will retract this piston, which will send a pulse to the previous 3 modules and reset them all. I'm not going to do a second take of that. All right, now let's work through if it's a signal strength of 2. So a signal strength of 2 comes through here and then gets forwarded onto this line here. So we have signal strength of 2 going through this comparator, signal strength of 2, signal strength of 1. So what will happen is both of these target blocks will be powered at the same time. So what will happen is this torch will turn off and this repeater will turn on, both at the same time, which means this line will actually stay on. Thus, this torch here will never turn off. So what's happened here is the signal strength of 2 powered both of these. And so this module gets skipped because of this logic right here. All right, let's continue to follow it. So signal strength of 2, signal strength of 1 gets passed through this comparator, and then a signal strength of 1, and then you can see here that it dies, right? So this one never turns on, but this torch does turn off, turning off this line, turning on this torch, and if this one's available to be moved to, then it'll do the exact same thing, right, as we discussed before. It'll move this iron nugget over to this one, thus kicking off the reset for the previous 3 modules, etc., etc. Signal strength of 3, exactly the same thing, right? So signal strength of 3 comes into here. Then we have a 3, 2. This module does nothing. 2, 1. This module does nothing. 1, 0. This module attempts to turn on, and if it's successful, then it will reset the previous 3. So without further ado, I mean, let's see it in action. So you can see that I have manually set the player to be on this module. So if we say module 0 and module 1, right? So it's on module 1. And let's say that we want to move it by 1. So let's go into free cam over here and let's see what happens. Hold on a second. Okay, so I've changed the tick rate to 5. So that's 1/4 regular speed. So hopefully you can see all of this start to happen. So I will go ahead and position myself right above this, and let's click the button. There you go. And there you go. So that is a move 1 command. Now let's choose to move 2. So you can see that now this has moved over to here. So these redstone lines are on, but this one's off. So when the signal strength of 2 gets passed through this black line, it will be forwarded onto this decay line, right? It'll be forwarded onto this decay line from this point over here. So we will click that button and let's just enjoy and watch it. This is a move 2 command, so it should move to here. So it should skip this, move to here, and then deactivate this one. So click. There it is. It's coming. Gets forwarded onto the line, decays down. There we go. It gets selected, and the previous one gets reset. There you go. And that is exactly how it works. And of course, just for kicks, let's do a move 3 command. So now it's here, so it should skip these 2 and move over to here. Oh, actually, let's do this first. Let's actually disable it first. Let's make sure that I'm doing the right one. 1 second. Yes, that should be it. So let us attempt to move 3, but let's pretend, right, that this particular module is not available. So it's being blocked. So you'll see, there we go. Here comes the signal strength of 3. It's coming through. And you can see that this torch flashed. So it attempted to change this one to on, but it failed. So now let's just manually unblock it, come back over here, and then try to move by 3 again. And bam. So here it comes, going down the decay line. There it is. It successfully triggered. And we should see, there we go. That last one was deactivated. Pretty interesting stuff, right? But this part of the machine is not done quite yet. Now, you see, one of the requirements was that at any point in the song, any player can actually choose to just stop playing and then come back in whenever they want to. So in order to stop playing, right, they just need to reset all of their modules. Now, that part is super, super easy. You just send in a reset signal into this orange line, and it'll just reset everything for as long as the signal strength can carry. And then if you want to, do more of them, then you just put more repeaters down and insert it into this line. And that part is super, super easy. So that's literally this right here. So click that, you can see all of them reset. The harder part is having them opt back in. So that is this teal, wait, what is it? Cyan? Yeah, cyan. I swear I'm a Minecraft player. Anyways, so this cyan line right here, you can see that it's a very small addition to what we have over here, right? But this right here is what allows us to opt back in. And this is the opt in button right here. So let's go ahead and analyze what we have here. What this will do is it'll find the active module that is the furthest back. So actually not too dissimilar from this, but it does it in a completely different way. It finds the module that's the furthest back, and then this player will basically join whichever players are at that module. So of course, how does it know all the way over here which modules are active? Now, going back to the very first design that I showed you, right? When the furthest back module is activated, it'll also mark itself as available to be moved to. This is why. So if we go ahead and simulate that, right? We will have, let's say this one, this one, this one, and this one, right? Available to be moved to. So this right here, so because they're available, these are all unlocked, but you may have heard some pistons as well. Now that is happening right below. So we are harnessing this line right here, and we're using QC to power this piston down here. So we've got this note block here as an updater, this piston with a full cauldron, and that is going to be extended to this comparator here, going into a torch, going into a piece of redstone, and that is either blocking or not blocking these comparators here. And what happens here is very interesting. So I'm actually going to go ahead and take that out. So you'll see here that this travels up and over, and we have here a signal strength of 2, I believe. Hold on a second. Yeah. So this is set up to do a signal strength of 2. So it pushes out a signal strength of 2 into this block. And so we get a signal strength of 2 here, 1 here, and then we'll get our 1 here. But on the same delay, right, because these are both 1 tick, we will get a signal strength of 2 here, a signal strength of 2 here, right, because this block is being powered. And then we get a signal strength of 2 here and 1 here. So at the same time that this 1 appears here, we'll have another 1 appear here. Then on the same delay, we'll have a 1 appear here, and then we'll have a 2 come over here, 2 here, and then another 1 here. But as you can see, it's blocked, so not really. Let's backtrack a second. So what we'll have going on is a signal strength of 2 here, 1 here, 1 here, 2 here, 2 here, 1 here. These are both being powered, so this module is not affected. This signal strength of 1 gets passed through this comparator and into here. And then this signal strength of 2 is attempted to pass through this comparator, but is blocked. So we have a signal strength of 1 here and a signal strength of 0 here, which means this one is affected. And if we look back here, this one is available to be moved to. So essentially what we're doing here is hijacking this decay line and just kind of taking advantage of how it works in order to reinsert the player wherever we want. It's a very odd system, I understand. And you get some like 1, 1, and it is all hinged on the fact that these delays are the same. So 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, and so on. It's a very strange system. So let me just go ahead and slow down time one more time. All right, so without further ado, let's hover above and let's watch it happen. There you go. So you can see that it was inserted into this line. You might have seen the double 1 on this purple part here. And of course, that meant that this right here gets a signal strength of 1, and this one stays off. And then because it is available to be moved to, it succeeds, and this pink light turns on. Weird hacky system, don't you think? But it actually does turn out to work just fine. So that is your opt-out line right here, and your opt-in right here. Now let's combine everything. All right, so here we go. We have our purple and pink state management over here, and these blockers, as you can see here, are connected directly to our within 3 rule enforcer circuit. And you can also see that these outputs here, not only are they responsible for extending and retracting these pistons, but they are also fed all the way up here to these lamps up here. Oh, and of course into the within 3 circuit as well. Now the only change that I made from over there, so let's see, if I go over to these barrels, you can see that there are this many shovels inside these barrels, and that's because I'm feeding in a signal strength of 15 into the back of here. But, right, we wanted a signal strength of 8, right, to come out of these guys. And so we have now a signal strength of 15, 14, 13, 12 going into here. So we have considerably less shovels in these barrels. So we only have, yeah, anyways, just a slight difference between these two. But I just wanted to tell you why that's the case. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So we have this button right here to just force it into a state of 1. So keep in mind, by the way, this is 1 player only. So this is before we stack it. So we can see here that it is on part number 0 or 1. I like to index at 0, so it's 0 on this channel. And let's say that we want to move 1 forward. So we'll click this button. And there we go. It'll move 1 forward, and it'll also update the available lines. So it is marked itself as available, and it is also marked the next 3 as available. Let's move forward by 1 once more. There we go. That was successful. And now you can see that this line has turned off. It's updated for the rest of the next 3 as well, including whichever one is over here. You can see that it has two more signal strength to spare. Moving by 1 more space, you'll see this turn off. There we go. And it has updated, and so on and so forth. So now I'm going to go down here and just reset everything, and I'll show you the move by 2 and move by 3. So we're going to go ahead and move by 2. So we'll have it skip this one and go straight to there. There we go. And you'll see that the available markings are correctly updated. So let's move by 2 once again. And it should move to over here. There you go. And that is, once again, updated perfectly. And let's test our move by 3. Click that. It should move to that one there. Perfect. One last thing to test will be the opt-in, opt-out. So I'm just going to go ahead and place this here, just brute force that one marked as available. So you'll see that this one is now blocked. So we should see the second to last one light up when I decide to opt in. There we go, perfectly. And if I take this away, there we go. And if I decide to move, then I should be able to do so just fine. Perfect. And that's where I'm going to call it for part 1. That was a lot of information, so pat yourself on the back if you got through it all. Next week, we'll be finishing up the explanation by getting into how the stacked modules communicate with each other, how it displays on that big screen above it, and of course, how it actually plays music. Lots and lots to still get through, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. And of course, feel free to leave any questions that you have in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.